Okay, here we go. I have this value study of a gas mask illustration, and we're going to block in the colors using digital water, new simple water, and I'm going to pick a base tone for everything in the image. Usually I'll lower the opacity on this down to about 20%. I still want to have some of the color coming through underneath, so play around with your opacities. Something might work better than others. I like lower opacity, that way it's not so strong when you put it down. You can kind of build it up more. And I'll block in all the colors for each of the objects in the image. It really helps to have the value study already worked out, and when you apply the digital watercolor on top, it's almost like you're saving so much time figuring out all those values and those colors that will give form to your image and to the objects inside your image. I always recommend doing the value study and then even translating it into sepia tone, so that when you work with a lower opacity, you see some of that sepia tone coming through, and it's not just blacks and grays. So go under layers and choose dry digital watercolor, and now you can take a color, and it works just like regular watercolor, where if you paint on top, do a wash on top of another color, you'll see the colors underneath coming through. Just know that when you dry the digital watercolor, you're ready to move more opaque, or you can tone it with washes afterwards. It's the only way to really move ahead. Now once I've blocked in all the colors for this, for every object in the piece, I'm ready to start rendering. And one of my favorite brushes to use to start rendering is under Artists, and it's the Sargent Brush. It's great. The way I use it a lot of times is I'll just use it as kind of like a blending tool. So I have the values already worked out and the colors worked out. So what I'll do is I'll lower the opacity on the Sargent Brush to 0 and use it just as a blending tool and a rendering tool. And the thing about it is it gives you these great brush strokes and textures that I just love. So I'll brush over the line work and really blend it, or really turn it into some brush strokes. More a traditional feeling type of illustration. I'm not a fan of really smooth renderings, so I like things with a lot of tooth and bristle to it. And you can get a lot of that texture with the Sargent brush. Another tool I use is under blenders, and it's grainy water. Now, I love grainy water because of the texture as well, and it's got a little bit more of a smoother rendering, but you can still play around with the texture, and you can also paint with it as well by manipulating the resaturation at the top here. Um, 0 has no color, and if you move up to about 30%, you can add color a little bit at a time. And so the greater the number, the more color you put in. Another brush I like and I use often and is also in the blenders section is the water rake. Really great textures with the water rake, and use it as a blender. And you can also paint with it the same way you can add color with the grainy water with the resaturation toggle switch there. So as you can see, boosting it up to about 40, you can start painting in some color. It's best if you use it as a smaller size. Right now it's at 2.5, the size of the brush. And it's one of those brushes that if you get too big, then it starts to not do the same thing. it has a different effect. Another brush that I find very helpful in rendering is the Real Blender Tapered under blenders. Um, and it's got a nice tooth to it. It's got some nice bristles to it. And it's a little bit more smoother rendering tool. But as you can see, it can really take line art and turn it into value. And it looks great. So have fun. Hope these help.